A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. I'm glad you're with us on the program today. Coming up here in just a matter of moments, we're going to talk with Amy Swear of the Heritage Foundation about a situation that we've seen actually earlier this year, and now it seems to be rearing its ugly head again, talking about the delays for those who are hoping to exercise their Second Amendment rights. But in order to do so, they've got to get their government-mandated permission slip, whether it's a firearm owner's identification card in Illinois or an FID card in New Jersey or a pistol purchase permit in North Carolina or New Jersey, or even just the delays that we're seeing for concealed carry licenses. I mean, already right now, there are hundreds of thousands of Americans who are being impacted by this. Their rights are on hold because issuing authorities not only have been deluged with an influx of new gun owners and would-be gun owners, but also because of the coronavirus closures that may have shut offices down, limited office hours to appointment only. And so you've got this huge backlog that's just been growing throughout the year. Well, now things can be about to get exponentially worse because we're seeing another round of these coronavirus closures start to take effect. In New Jersey, the courts have just shut down for a second time. Governor Gavin Newsom actually being taken to court over his coronavirus closures. And I wanted to talk with Amy Swear of the Heritage Foundation about the legal potential for relief for these would-be gun owners whose rights aren't just being delayed, in my opinion, they are being denied while they're stuck in this legal limbo. Take a look and a listen. Hey, Amy, thank you so much for coming on the program. It's good talking with you today.
Yeah, good to be back. Thank you for having me.
You bet. I'm getting a little worried looking around the country and seeing the latest round of coronavirus closures. A lot of states moving backwards. I mentioned a couple minutes ago that New Jersey actually shutting down its court system for the second time this year. Are you concerned that that's going to lead to another round of, delays for folks who are trying to apply for their concealed carry license or even in some states simply apply for their permission slip to own a firearm?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've already seen just how backed up a lot of these permitting applications are in a lot of places. And honestly, in some places, it almost seems like, because they were just so recently getting back into the swing of not doing appointment only that it's less so that you're going to see a second round of it and more almost just that it's going to be building off of the first round. I mean, you look at Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, which is the Pittsburgh area, one of the biggest counties in Pennsylvania. That was appointment only until just about 2 weeks ago. Finally just started taking walk-ins, was going to do this big drive-through concealed carry permitting event. And now it has canceled that event. It's gone back to appointments only, and you look as of early October, the earliest available appointments then were in March of 2021. You see the same thing in Wayne County, Michigan, which is the Detroit area. Mm-hmm. You had a local news outlet that just last week, tried to set up an appointment for permitting there, and they're looking at 9 months. The earliest they could get already was July 12th, 2021. And so, the longer these coronavirus shutdowns continue or to go back to continuing, the more backed up these processes are going to get. And so it's just going to keep building on top of that in so many places.
We've seen some legal challenges that have been filed already around the country in that first round of coronavirus closures. But it takes a while. The court system itself in many states, as I just mentioned, has been kind of shut down. So these cases have not progressed to the point where, the Supreme Court could consider one of these issues. But what do you think about the legal arguments that at some point, if the state can't comply with its own mandates to process these permits within 14 days or 30 days or 45 days, that they're not just delaying people's right to keep and bear arms, but those people's rights are being outright denied and infringed on?
Yeah, so this is actually something you're seeing a number of these lawsuits. There was already one in the works in Chicago that we've talked about over at the Heritage Foundation, where in that state they have, I think it's 60 days under state law to either confirm or deny that application. And in some cases, you're seeing 90 days, 100 plus days before they're getting that in. And a lot of that was actually a problem pre-coronavirus. Again, sort of compounding that. So I think you've seen a couple things now that we've been, 9 months now of coronavirus. You have seen at least some places with respect to renewals of permits, making extensions, making accommodations for those seeking to renew permits that might be expiring. But that's if you already have the permit in the first place.
Right.
That's of no help to people who already have those, who are looking to get those first permits. I think some of those initial lawsuits were good for places like California, some areas of California that were just going to shut down your ability to purchase a gun altogether. So at least now a lot of them are taking appointments, and it's a slow process, but it's still a process. So there has been some good coming out of even just these initial lawsuits. But again, this is starting to get, if you didn't already think it was problematic, when you're looking at places that are now 9 months out setting appointments, this starts getting legally problematic. You can go back and forth sort of where is that line, but where is that gray area between, well, we're trying and we just can't do it, and now you're infringing on someone's right, in a clear unconstitutional way. And I think you're getting very, very close to that line where it's just unquestionable. When you're keeping people from getting permits or from getting guns even for up to 9 months, up to a year, that's clearly constitutionally problematic. And it's just going to keep getting worse. And I don't know what the answer is. If you have, on the one hand, legally mandated coronavirus shutdown, and on the other hand, the balancing of your Second Amendment rights, I don't know how courts are going to handle that. And I don't know what the answer is. And so it will be interesting to see how this plays out, or even just from a practical perspective of, how do you force them to go faster? How do you force them to have more resources?
Right.
And it's just.
Well, it is. Again, I mean, obviously from a rights perspective, we're very concerned about this, but from a legal perspective, again, I mean, a lot of these are unsettled issues because we've never really gone through anything like this. I mean, the last time we had a pandemic that, impacted a government and society the way that COVID has, you got to go back a century. Right. Concealed carry licenses really weren't much of a thing 100 years ago. But now, as you say, you get to a case where, and it's, in Philadelphia, it's over a year right now. If you, called the Philadelphia Police Department today and said, I want to make an appointment for my, to drop off my concealed carry application, not to have it processed, but just to drop off your application, they're going to tell you to come back more than a year from now. But as you say, in states like, Illinois, where a FOID card is required to own a firearm legally, right, and they're still dealing with these delays. Again, unfortunately, the courts have not fleshed out a lot of Second Amendment cases dealing with our right to carry, our right to bear arms. But Supreme Court has stated unequivocally, right, we have a fundamental right, of self-defense in our home. And so to me, it is both legally but practically speaking as well. It's a huge issue because if you've got in Illinois, I think right now they've got a backlog of like 42,000 applications. Yeah. And it's taking months.
And the thing is, I don't see these slowing down. I mean,
no.
So, there were some people who seemed to be under the impression that once the election was over and once that initial rush to get guns was over, that this would slow down. And I just don't see that happening. I mean, you look at even here in D.C., I personally had to recently go through my concealed carry renewal process and doing the class all over again. And you had classes just sold out all over the place, left, right, and center. This is not slowing down. This is going to continue backing up. And it's, it's interesting because you look at this again from a legal perspective, it's clearly infringing on rights, but from a practical perspective of, can a court just now say, okay, there is no more FOID system in Illinois. Everyone can get a gun if they want. It's just going to be interesting in sort of a state-by-state process of what courts do from a practical perspective of forcing these government agencies to go faster. It's just going to be interesting to follow.
Well, and I'm wondering specifically about like Illinois. As you say, there were lawsuits that were already underway before COVID even hit. because the delays at that point, you were looking at, 4 or 5 month delays. And the Illinois State Police said, well, look, we just don't have enough people who are processing these. We're going to hire more people, we swear. Gun groups had said, look, the Illinois State Police was pulling money out of this program and diverting these resources elsewhere. So there were already, as you say, lawsuits underway. But given the fact that now these delays have grown exponentially worse, does that add some extra legal heft to the argument on the part of groups like the Second Amendment Foundation or the Illinois State Rifle Association who are arguing that, look, our rights are being curtailed here because we're being stuck in this legal limbo now that the problem has gotten worse and more people. I mean, the delays are longer, but more people are impacted as well. Is that something that could give a judge a reason to give one of these cases a second look?
Yeah, well, absolutely, because again, sort of as these cases continue to back up, and now you're looking at not just 5 months, 6 months, you're looking at a year and a half. The longer that stretches out, the bigger and more significant of a burden and a barrier that is to the exercise of a Second Amendment right. I mean, that is just objectively the case, that it now increases the burden that the state has imposed on your ability to exercise that right. And so, of course, it makes it, a more compelling argument. And it's interesting in particular, you bring up the Illinois case where some of the allegations there are that, this goes back a ways, that they've been, siphoning off funds that were meant to fix this exact problem and the sort of the self-imposed problem, the self-inflicted wound where they've been underfunding it for years. And now all of a sudden you have the sort of worst case scenario, right? Where, you have coronavirus and you have this dramatically increased demand for it, and they couldn't do it when it was normal. So they certainly can't do it now, and it's sort of their own fault. It's certainly, and it all just gets back to that initial issue, right? That these are all government imposed barriers. These were regulations and frameworks that were set up by government. In some cases with sort of this underlying feeling of, we're doing this on purpose to slow down demand for guns.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's sort of coming back around to bite them in the rear end, legally speaking, because these were things that they did on purpose in the first place. And it's, this isn't some sort of naturally occurring phenomenon. It's naturally occurring coronavirus phenomenon now imposed together with the framework they intentionally created to slow this down.
Yeah.
So they can't just say, oh, well, we had nothing to do with this. Of course you did. You created this framework with this intent. And, sorry, coronavirus happened and it's biting you in the rear end.
Yeah. And, and it's interesting to me because, I mean, not only have they created this framework, but they've created a crime where none existed before, right? If it were not for this regulatory scheme, and again, I'm just going to stick with Illinois, where, every legal gun owner has to have a firearms owner identification card. Okay, well, you've now created the crime of illegal gun possession if you have a firearm without a FOID card. And I'm just guessing, Amy, that there are some individuals in the state of Illinois and across the country who are otherwise legal law-abiding citizens, but they've made that choice of, what, I'm not going to be defenseless. I'm not going to be unable to protect myself and my kids. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to have my gun. Hopefully I get my FOID card 4 months from now or 5 months from now or wherever. But in the meantime, I'm not going to be disarmed and defenseless. And I know that those people exist out there, and they're breaking the law, but they have no real violent criminal intent. The reason why they're breaking the law is because the state of Illinois is not upholding the law that they put in place.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that's almost certainly the case, regardless of where any individual falls on, should you promote the breaking of the law if your life is in danger, or, as you see these sort of violent riots and civil unrest across cities. But I think just as a matter of being realistic, that is almost certainly the case. You see this with people who are applying for concealed carry permits, especially. I think to me that would be sort of the interesting legal case that breaks the system, right? Is you have someone who has to defend their life, while illegally carrying or illegally possessing a firearm, and then there's the state to charge them with it. What would the state do in that regard? Say, well, you tried to get a firearm legally and we kept you from doing so, and it turns out you really actually did need that firearm to defend yourself. It's just an interesting question of, I don't know what a state does in that point. Does the state really want to push that issue on constitutional grounds? And I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah.
But I think you're right that there are going to be a lot of people in very precarious legal situations until states get this sorted out, until counties get this sorted out, and allow people to exercise their constitutional rights in a timely manner.
Absolutely. Well, again, as I said, multiple court challenges underway, hopefully within the next, but before the vaccine becomes widely available. It looks like, they're talking still about 9 months maybe or more before things start to get back to normal. So, we do have time for these issues to get resolved legally. But in the meantime, not a lot of good news for gun owners in these jurisdictions that simply aren't upholding, their end of the statutory requirements, unfortunately.
No, not at all. But I think in the long run, this is good news for the Second Amendment. These are going to force courts to analyze a lot of these issues. And I think, again, even from a legislative practical matter, you're seeing now people who otherwise may not have thought a whole lot about the implications of gun laws, who are seeing just how quickly these things, even under normal circumstances, but then, again, when you throw in the abnormal circumstances of global pandemics, they're seeing just how quickly these, what they thought were just normal minor barriers become very quickly, essentially extinguishing Second Amendment rights for people. So I think going forward, you're going to see a lot of people start rethinking the implications of these laws when they come up for passage.
I hope so. And I am hopeful that the Supreme Court is going to take an interest in at least one of these cases when they get a chance to weigh in as well. Amy Swear with the Heritage Foundation, thank you as always for coming to the program. It's so good talking with you, and hope we get a chance to do this again soon.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate Amy joining us on the program. Now let's get to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, our recidivist report. We will start there with a story out of North Carolina. A murder over the weekend in Concord, North Carolina, where an employee at Discount Tire shot and killed what police are calling a totally random event. It started as a verbal dispute, turned into a standoff when store employees told police that the suspect inside the store, along with a store employee, 27-year-old Terrence Wallace of China Grove, who was shot and killed. After a 4-hour standoff, police were able to take the suspect in custody. Jeremy Spann was arrested, taken to a local hospital for an unrelated medical condition. According to Fox 8 in North Carolina, Spann is a convicted felon who has been arrested 4 times in the past 2.5 years, including for assault on a female, as well as a felony probation violation. But apparently none of those arrests, even for felony probation violation, led to Spann spending any meaningful amount of time behind bars. So he was out on the streets in possession of an illegally obtained firearm, again, when he is alleged to have shot and killed the 27-year-old Wallace over the weekend. Today's Armed Citizen story from West Virginia, where a man has been arrested for burglary after a homeowner ended up holding the suspect at gunpoint for police. Yeah, you can see that's Henry Stuck there of Kanawha County, West Virginia, who was taken into custody after he tried to break into a home. Not a lot of details on this case, but we do know that the homeowner able to detain Mr. Stuck without firing a single shot, like the vast majority of defensive gun uses around the country. No shots were fired, but this story, again, has a happy ending, at least for the homeowner, perhaps not for Mr. Stuck, who is again behind bars and facing charges. And finally today, our good deed of the day from the great state of Kansas, where a would-be police officer, aided by the owner of Dumb Wire Guy Automotive Electrical. Greg Whitley is the owner. He said, I saw this guy go by and his motorcycle had a flat tire. So the shop owner decided that he was going to help. He gave the stranded man a ride to an appointment. He said you could tell he needed a hand up He wasn't looking for a handout. He's new to the area. He'd actually lost his wallet, so he didn't know anybody in the area. He didn't have any family or friends, was kind of in a pinch. Well, the guy that Whitley helped out is a man named Darius Ousley, who is a current recruit for the Wichita Police Department. And he actually made his appointment thanks to Whitley. But again, now is apparently on the short list to become an officer. The 23-year-old passed the testing that is needed to become a recruit there in Wichita. He said, it's something I've always wanted to do since I was a kid. I did also have a mentor. I was in the wrong direction at first, and they pretty much put me back on track. So there you go, in the right place, at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing, and maybe help a young man get a job with the Wichita Police Department. Greg Whitley, the owner of Dumb Wire Guy Automotive Electrical, we thank you, sir, for your very good deed. That is all the time we've got for you on this edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. I want to thank you for being a part of the program as well. Don't forget, you can subscribe to Town Hall Media on YouTube. That way you'll never miss a program. And if you just want the audio version, we've got you covered there too. Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts. You can find us there. Probably some other places too, but certainly where your favorite podcasts are found. We'll be back tomorrow with more of the latest Second Amendment news and information from all across the nation. But in the meantime, thanks for being a part of the program today. Until we talk again, be well, be safe, be free. And we'll see you soon with another edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company.